Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences.
Oh, we're starting the podcast with a laugh. That's hilarious.
I haven't laughed yet, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. I think humor is a very powerful way of just dealing with life. As a British man, we have to laugh a lot at a lot.
But we'll come back to that because I don't think British people actually laugh.
We really do laugh. We've got the best sense of humor.
Have you? I'm not going to insult an entire continent. I'm not going to do that.
The entire continent that, you're connected to.
I know. I come from British stock, so I really should be careful about what foot I put in my mouth. Oh, Lord.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
Hi, Richard. Well, I'm wonderful.
See, we've got laughter. It's working. Now, is that a nervous laugh? Or are we actually that funny?
I don't know if I know how to nervous laugh.
Okay.
Maybe I think it's just a laugh.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Cool. So Julie, tell us who Julie is.
So who Julie is? Well, I've been thinking about this question actually because I've gone and watched all of your podcasts. I did my homework. I did my history. I hyper focused for the last.
You've literally
3
spent
days.
a working week watching everybody else's content.
Well, I was curious about how would I introduce myself? So I've been thinking. I made a list.
Did you check it twice? Are you naughty or nice?
No, but I am wonderful.
Okay, that's
so that's at the top of the list. So generally, Julie she's Canadian. She's an immigrant living in the Netherlands. She is late diagnosed ADHD. She's soon to be 40. She's an artist. She's a daughter. She's a girlfriend. She's a writer. I'm an adventurer. I'm all kinds of things. And quirky falls in there somewhere too, I'm sure.
I like how you subtly change from third person to first person to talk about adventuring, because that means that you're subliminally distancing yourself away from being, all those other adjectives.
So it has been commented that I talk about myself in the third person an abnormally high amount. And so then I catch myself doing it. And so it'll be like, well, Julie is this, and she's also this. And then it's like, no, Julie, first person, you're talking about yourself. You can use your real words.
So I love it when my brain overtakes my mouth. I had a stammer and stutter for many years. It rears its head when I'm tired or excited or trying to rush.
I had a nap before this call because I was worried I would be tired.
I recorded another episode before this.
Did you get a break in between?
Yeah, I had some lunch. I had a bowl of chili. It'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll have a carb nap at about 4 o'clock. Canadian born of British blood, now living in Holland. How does that work?
So Canadian born of more than just British blood.
Okay.
So on my mom's side of the family, her mother was born in the UK and came over to Canada in the late 20s, early 30s. My grandfather on my mom's side, his family came out of France in the 1700s. And then my dad, him and his family, they were born in Hungary. And they left Hungary in the Civil Revolution in 56, ended up in England, and then missed the boat to Australia and ended up in Canada. So that's how I came to be Canadian. And then, I was 32. And I had just gone through a divorce and decided I was finally going to achieve the things that had been on my 10-year plan that just kept getting shifted. And so I sold all my belongings and moved to France with 2 suitcases and a cat and went to grad school. Don't speak French.
That's going to be my question. Is like, you grew up in Canada to French descendant grandparents. Did you grow up in French Canada? And you're like, I went to France, couldn't speak French. I was like, that's a no then.
Very much grew up in English speaking Canada. Yeah, I went to France, and then I was living and working in the south of France. And in the age of the internet, met a really lovely man who happens to be Dutch. And we did the distance thing for a while, and then we decided one of us should probably move, and I was more likely to settle better in Dutch culture than he was in French culture, and I had no family in Europe, so it was easier. And so we packed me up, and voila, here I am. So it's been, when did I leave Canada? 2016. So however many years that is, 7 years this summer.
Cool. So was that a COVID romance?
No, this was pre-COVID, but we actually had been apart for quite like distance for a few years before we got me here. And so I'd only been here full time about 4 months, and then we went into lockdown. So, you know, you've done the it's like as if you were working with somebody for years and years and years in other offices, and then all of a sudden you had to share like a 5 square meter space, and you're not sure if you actually, but thankfully we quite like each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we did go through COVID together, and COVID is actually part of what drove me to ending up with a diagnosis. The whole experience of isolation and things like that really, really brought out some of the features.
So what drew you to that? Were you seeing it in the media, seeing it on social media, and thinking that's me, or you know, going a little bit crazy and then trying to work out why you're going crazy?
So I actually I went out on burnout in 2022, and was sitting there talking to the psychologist at the doctor's office, and my youngest brother has ADHD. And he's this stereotypical hyperactive little boy. And so that was what I thought ADHD was. And then I was sitting there talking to this lovely woman, and I said, you know, I think I might have ADHD. And she looks at me, she goes, oh, you don't say, and just starts laughing. And I was like, okay, then maybe.
Is that reaffirming my?
It was hilarious, because it was so validating to hear somebody who, she herself is late diagnosed, and she saw it in me and thought I knew. And then everyone I've told since then, who is also somewhere in a spectrum, thought I knew. So everyone around me, including my own family, just assumed I knew this about myself. And I'm over here going, oh, I've got so much self-awareness. I know all these things. Blindsided me. So I think a little bit of it was social media, but it was also seeing some of my friends start receiving diagnoses. And I'm of an age where perimenopause is a real consideration. And so I just started looking into like, what could these symptoms, what could these things be? What is making me burnt out? And I just kind of kept coming back to this, I wonder. So down the rabbit hole I went. So that's been a year next week since I got my diagnosis.
So blindsided because you were happy to get the diagnosis and the label, or blindsided by all of the trauma that then resurfaces and grief that resurfaces, that all of the fuck ups of your life were down to this thing that you now got a label for the thing?
A little bit of one, but mostly two. So it was things like realizing all the times I've stood in the kitchen trying to make chocolate chip cookies and failing, and just saying to myself, if only I could crack the code on my brain. This isn't hard. If only blah, blah, blah. And realizing that all of these conversations I'd been having with myself, and these conversations that in a big part ended me in the first burnout, and unfortunately what we think might be a second burnout, is a lot of it's related to the neurotype and the lack of awareness. And so having to sit with that and realize that it isn't always my fault. Like, it's a lot of it's out of my control. There's stuff within my control, obviously, but I really want to swear, and I know we're not supposed to, but motherfucker, right? Like, just this.
It's like, I don't want to turn up the volume. You're allowed to turn up the volume. 11.
Yeah, but that was the
Canadians
feeling.
don't swear. I was thinking of like, oh, bloody LA. But
well, so that's actually one of the things that when I was talking with somebody about it, and I said, like, I swear like a trucker. And I usually only drop the F-bomb, but it is, as far as I'm concerned, it is fully part of my vocabulary.
absolutely.
And yeah, you throw it into as many words as you can, and it makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. And I find myself, like, sort of,
more honest people swear.
I feel like we say that to justify it, and maybe it's true. I don't know.
Well, everybody who swears as much as I do are really honest people. So
then validated.
Then, lived experience validated.
There you go. Done.
It's all conjecture.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was really hard. Like, I remember going through a course of therapy and learning I had low self-esteem, and being, I get shocked because I thought I knew myself so well. And so that was really hard.
I'm not shocked that I've got low self-esteem because I've had it forever. So tell some friends.
Yeah, well, but I wonder though, because I think part of it is, it's kind of like, when you're meeting somebody for the first time, and they're so oblivious to something, and then you sort of like, oh, hey, did you know you had, like, your zipper undone the whole night, that kind of thing, and they're like, huh, that's what that was. Like, that was sort of how it felt, like this moment of
realization.
Oh, yeah. Well, shit, that's okay. That's a thing. And that's where I've sort of been this past year, of just like, how much of it do I identify with? How, making sure I'm scared. I'm scared of going so deep into the rabbit hole that I don't know how to find my way out again. And because what's out again is what's known.
Did you just introduce yourself as an adventurer?
Yes, but not necessarily in all the ways.
So I'm really open to new experiences, except for the ones that I don't want to take.
Well, it kind of goes back to the time I had a supervisor tell me I was a perfectionist, and I was thoroughly insulted. I thought that was just the cruelest thing somebody could have said to me at the time.
But because you have high attention to detail and you want to do a good job, or because you definitely don't want to be associated with being a perfectionist?
I think it's my assumption of what a perfectionist is.
Mm.
It's what I think of a perfectionist is it's a dirty word. It's not a compliment. Like, when I think of a perfectionist, I think of someone who is finicky and nitpicky and all of these things, and I just don't see myself that way. But then I realized that growing up with a father who was an artist, who we had a household full of unfinished projects, and I think about,
you can't all the see up there.
I've seen the YouTube videos, remember? Yep.
Yeah. Full of really interesting
and it's things. The thing where you realize, like, there are tons of things that I want to do, personally or professionally, and I pitch them and I start to get going on them, and then I realize I'm unlikely to finish it, or I want to do it, but I doubt I'll finish it, therefore I never start it. And that is, in fact, the perfectionist side of things. But I've just always viewed it as a very like practical thing. Like, well, if I don't think I'll finish it, there's no point starting it because I don't want to be my father's daughter. But instead, I'll do things like move across the world at the so-called drop of a hat.
Well, impulse control is a real struggle.
Ooh, I scored very low on that on my EQ test. Oh, imagine that. I did an EQ test a while ago, and that was
interesting.
Not. Well, it was interesting. I wasn't in a good place in my career at that point. This was about 10 years ago. But empathy and impulse control barely made it onto the chart.
Onto the register.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've said that your dad's an artist. I've got lots of questions about stuff in your background.
Sure.
So firstly, you've got a plant. Hang on, this is mirrored. There.
Got a plant. Yeah.
Is that a sculpture or a succulent or a cactus? The little one on the side.
Oh, the little on the.
Yeah.
That's Lego.
Okay, you just said a word to me that I don't understand.
Okay, hold on.
Go for it. Oh, it's a Lego plant.
It's a Lego succulent.
Now you have raised in my estimations. Cool.
Because I'm a woman who builds Lego, or
well that too. I've got Minecraft Steve. But yes, I don't have any Lego in here because I'm too poor to buy Lego.
To be honest, I only rediscovered the joy of Lego because I have 3 brothers. So growing up, like we played with Lego, but it was always the Star Wars Lego and things like that. And it was the boys' toy. And then my partner's big into Lego, and I guess a couple of years ago, I thought I would do this really romantic thing, and I would buy him the Lego flowers. And in my mind, it would be really romantic to build him the flowers, totally robbing him of the joy of Lego.
Yeah.
So needless to say, that romantic gesture kind of face planted. But while building the flowers, I realized how important the kinesthetic, like the physical connection, and how much it quieted my brain. And so since then, we have quite a few of the Lego experts. So I have the whole the bookstore, and we have the police department, and it goes very well. But anyway,
and the $1,000 Millennium Falcon.
No, we don't have any of those, thankfully. But we do have a bigger house now, so I could live to eat my words at some point.
Yeah, I'm more into miniatures than Lego. So I've got I've got Millennium Falcon that I got for Christmas, and then I've got an R5.
Yeah.
And then we've got BB-8.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Let's stop talking about.
No, Lego is
plastic models.
It's a fantastic thing, and I think we should do more with it. I think grown-ups should play a heck of a lot more than we do.
So you should really go and have a conversation with Rachel, because she's all about play.
I remember hearing that because she was talking.
I remember reading because she was. Yes, I'm not.
I had captions on, so it was reading, hearing, and seeing. It was all the things.
I can't do. It's really weird that so I grew up. So I'm of an era when House of Flying Daggers, Crouching Tiger came out. All of these like films that had some subtitles. I remember the plots of those films, but not what was said, because I can't watch a movie and read at the same time. I just can't. But now, some videos I need to put on captions just so I can understand what's happening.
So it's interesting because living with, so my partner's fluent in English, but obviously it's not his mother tongue. So he just has captions on everything. And I've gotten really used to it. And so now I actually can't hear as well. Like I can't concentrate if I'm not reading the words. And it's been interesting because getting used to reading it has made plots, because I'm a massive reader. That's always been my thing. So podcasts are the hardest thing for me because I can't stay interested in just the words if I'm hearing it, which is why when I was on your channel on the YouTube and I could watch them, all of a sudden I could listen to all of these conversations with, a moderate amount of skipping and speed adjustments and various things, but I could listen and I could be engaged because I could see it and I could read it and I could hear it. And that's what I've discovered with films and shows is all of a sudden I'm that much more engaged because I'm actually relying on the written text. And so if I've looked away and I've not listened, I'll go back. But I also watch a lot more international things now. Been watching a German series because why not, right?
Yeah. I was going to watch, so I think it was HBO did a serialized remake of Das Boot. So there was a World War II U-boat film that came out in like the 70s.
Okay.
And then Sky have made a serial version of a similar story. I don't think it's the same boat, but it's in German. And I was like, I'd watch it if it was English dubbed, but I'm not reading. I'm so dyslexic as well, so I'm like, I've got a whole bookshelf of interesting things that I'll skim or go and look at a reference of, but I can't read.
Yeah,
I can physically read. I just don't read more than like 2 paragraphs.
But I mean, in my circle of neurodivergent folk, but also non-neurodivergent folk, just in my circle of people, I am an abnormally high volume reader. So I've always, that's how I regulate, right? As a kid, I would find myself I would get put in timeout on purpose just so I could be in my room to read so that I'd have some quiet time. And so, looking back, you start to pick up on certain things. But films and stuff have always been really, really hard for me because I can remember the full plot of The Little Mermaid. Couldn't tell you a thing about what we watched last week. But I know I watched a whole lot of stuff, but it's not Ariel and Eric.
So talking about not Ariel and Eric, I think the mountains in the picture behind you are painted because they don't look like a photo.
So they're actually a photo, and that's where I'm from.
That's quite cool. But just looking at the, is it like sandstone or like yellow granite?
So it's actually the sunrise.
Oh, bouncing off of it. All right, okay.
Over it's called the Three Sisters Mountain Range in Kananaskis, which is only an 8-hour flight from Amsterdam. So, you could go there for the weekend. And that, I don't remember which...
By spending a day getting there and a day getting back.
Yeah, but there's an 8-hour time zone difference. So really, you lose nothing.
Oh, except for sleep. So what you do is you sleep for 16 hours and then you'll wake up on the right time zone.
But no, that is home. Okay, but it's not home. It's where I'm from because this is home, but that's where I'm from. So
So my desktop picture, which you can't see because it's in there.
It's in there.
Is me on the hills above a lake that I used to go to with my grandparents. So it's like my spiritual home. Despite I've only been there 10 times in my life.
But it matters.
But there's just something about it. And I took the family there for the first time last summer. And yeah, it's a sunset over the mountains because it's in Scotland. So it's sunset over the mountains with what's left of a storm front. So you've got the reflection of the sun on the bottom of the clouds. It's a very nice photo.
Very cool.
And my wife took it when she was higher up the mountain than I was. And that's because we were walking down it. I wouldn't dare let my wife beat me up a hill.
But you would be happy to beat her going down. Fair enough. I mean, anytime I have to go down,
I'm there to break her fall.
Yes, that's one that. Let's go with that. I have a tendency to repeat the mantra, I'm not a billy goat. Anytime I have to go down any kind of steep face, it's just like, nope, I'm not a billy goat, because I'm so scared I'm going to stumble because, I'm moderately clumsy, and that I'm just going to go tumbling down and off the edge of the mountain.
I think that's why I always go first, so then I can be laughed at.
Then they'll know where to find the body.
Yeah. It's like, hey, can I have an air ambulance? He's down there.
Yeah, because if you were after them,
then I'd be lost forever.
Forever into the ether.
So our last night there, I went up to so there's an Iron Age burial mound and cairn stones right at the top of the hill. Very so on the last night, I went all the way up on my own, and I came down and it was dark because it's a very long way up. I think I left at 8:15 at night, and this was in August. So sunset at about 9:30. I think I got back about 10.
Okay.
But yeah, walking down a mountain in the dark.
Did you have a flashlight or torch, as we call them?
Phone, but phone reception in Scotland's sketchy.
But you could at least use it as a light.
No,
if you had enough battery.
I have enough experience and training to know that my eyes are better without having a flashlight.
Okay, fair enough.
As long as it's not massively overcast or foggy, then it's amazing how much light the moon and the stars put out.
This is true.
So the next thing, is that like a tile with a mirror in, or?
It is a old. It's like a picture frame of some kind. I think it may have been a ceiling tile at some point.
Okay.
And it's got a mirror in it.
Cool.
It's just, at one point I was collecting, when I thought I would have a home office, I started collecting really eclectic bits and bobs. And then it took us a lot longer to find our home. So I had to start getting rid of some of the things I had in storage, but I quite liked that and I kept it. But it just lives there on the wall. I don't even think it's actually at the right height for me to look at.
Into.
No, I don't think so.
How's neurodiversity, neurodivergence impacted your life? So despite flying around the world at no notice, talk to me about other stuff.
So it impacts my life in a variety of ways. So it's things like I'm a chronic overthinker and I'm a worrier. And so I, as evidenced by all the prep I did for a friendly chat with a stranger on the internet, right? That's not what I think. Now that I know that that's what is causing it, I'm a lot kinder to myself. It's done things like I absolutely suffer from rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD. So can we have a chat? Instantly thrown back to childhood, being called into the president's room, going to be expelled for no good reason. You
said that like you were expelled with no good reason.
No, I was never expelled with no good reason. That's the thing, though. I've actually never been called into the president's office, into the principal's office for anything. I was a surprisingly really good kid. But I just have that fear of authority and that fear of reprimand. I put my foot in my mouth all the time. So insulting an entire island of people, for example.
I don't think you did.
Okay,
I think I did by mocking the Canadian accent.
Well, as long as you don't say a boot, we're probably okay.
But
that's one that I don't say.
No, you don't.
And when I hear people do it, I'm always like, what's wrong with you? But it's just, I think I grew up watching American Sesame Street.
Yeah.
So I'm more likely to be suspected as an American just with my speech patterns, that I sound more Western.
Well, it's really funny that one of my old colleagues was from Michigan, and he always used to be labeled Canadian, and I was like, there's not that much of a difference.
For such a large landmass, there are huge swaths of us who sound very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that your population density is actually really, really close together on the East Coast, like on the East Coast and US border, and there's like nobody for the rest of Canada.
It's not quite nobody.
No, but it's like 80% in like.
Yeah. So the province I'm from Alberta, and Alberta has the same geographic footprint as France.
Yeah.
France is what, about 60-ish million people?
Yeah.
Last I checked, Alberta is like 3.5. So we have two major cities, and we have, we have another city, and then we have a lot of small cities. But we just don't have the population. We have a massive landmass. And people stayed where the highway was and where the river is and where the resources are. So, I grew up in a landlocked province with beautiful, beautiful nature. But yeah. So anyway, going back to your question about how is neuro, I think the thing is, it's my whole life without me knowing it's my whole life. So it's like I was saying earlier, it's, not being able to follow a recipe to save my life, because I'm always like, well, I don't have that, but Google tells me that this is an okay substitute. So let's just use some of that, but I don't have the proper measuring tools. So we'll just do a bit of this or a bit. And I do that in everything, right? I'm always going to school because I love to learn. So every, 2 to 3 years, I'm looking at a new course. I suffer massive role fatigue. So after about 18 months, you'll see me looking to switch roles. I've been able to stay at the same company a lot of the times. But just this constant need for stimulation and validation and recognition and to contribute. And I learned really early on, not be bored. And I learned really early on in my career that I'm high in ideation and I'm relatively low in execution, especially when it comes to interest. And so what I've found to be really successful is actually partnering with a colleague who's the mirror of me, high in execution and lower in ideation. And then we make magic together because they can listen to all the things that are spewing out of me and help me figure out what's possible and help me figure out how to make it happen, and then actually build the report that says what we did that I can then analyze and explain back. But ask me to build the report, and it's like crickets. And it's really, that's really hard to accept about myself, because I feel like I should be able to do it.
But you think that you should because you're holding yourself to a societal norm.
I'm holding myself to a societal norm, to a peer-to-peer comparison, I have this tattoo on my arm, and it says, it says, "Be as you are." There we go. And it's in my mom's writing. And it's a song that I heard when I was backpacking by myself in my 30s. And when I asked my mom if she would write the words, and she loathes tattoos. She was raised by a very British woman. She got out my dead grandmother's pen, and she said, "Your grandmother doesn't approve either, but if we were to pick your tattoo, it would say, 'Be as you should be.'" Because that to her, I was like, "Well, yeah, I am. Be as you are. That's how I should be." And she said, no. But my mom also has ADHD, and she's known her whole life. And we just talked about this last night, actually. Like, why did we never talk about it with me?
Oh, because you passed as normal.
I fell through the cracks because I had brothers who were much more visibly hyperactive. So if I'm just sitting there reading a book, I'm not the worry child. And I have got myself through. I've got a master's degree. Like, I've done all these things. So why even think about it, right? Obviously, if it is there, it isn't a big deal. But it is a big deal.
Oh, it's a little bit like my post yesterday.
I have
you didn't see that?
No, not yet.
So this is the sign language sign for
okay.
bull, and it's shitting. About the superpower narrative.
Oh Lord.
So, you know, we're all neurodiverse, but not everyone is marginalized by it.
Yep.
And then getting into the conversation of, you know, some people who are neurodivergent are the greatest people on the planet. You know, they're the writers, the inventors, the comedians, the actors.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people that are absolutely debilitated by the same label, the same traits, but adversely. So can we just stop with narrative of, oh, it's great? You know, JP Morgan did a autism at work project challenge piece of work. They hired a load of autistic folk and put them in a job, and then measured their performance and went, look how fabulous autistic folk are at work. Everyone should have autistic people at work.
We're not animals in a zoo.
Yeah. Well, isn't that a little bit exploitative? Maybe. You know, okay, are you giving opportunities to people who deserve the opportunities? Well, that's fair. But what else are you doing? Yeah, have you taught them to swim, given them access to the swimming pool, and thrown them in the deep end, without realizing that you still got sharks in the swimming pool? You haven't made the environment safe for these people to be their best in that environment. So yes, I get that some people have done extraordinarily well because of their difference. And many people really struggle to hang on to existence because of the struggles they have with their differences. And there's many people in the middle that have done all right but struggling, or are doing pretty bad but occasionally do all right. So,
I mean,
stop having a conversation about the three people at this end, because there's all of these others that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dealing right now with so I'm in a role where I'm 100% remote. And I thought this would be, I have these really candid conversations with my employer because it's not for me. I need people. And I am realizing the isolation. So yes, there's a lot of freedom that comes with being able to work from home. But in my case, it is debilitating because I am not having my social needs met. So my needs of community and connection can only be met so far through a computer screen. And so when my partner comes home, I'm like a puppy who has to go outside to pee. I am so excited to see him. And I overwhelm him with my need for connection. And it's debilitating, and it's really, really hard because I see all of these posts about everyone should work remote and how so many more people have been able to get access to work. And I know that, and I know how much it changes the game for people. But I'm
if
not.
The only tool you have is a hammer, everything is a nail.
Yeah.
So just because it works for some doesn't mean it will work for all.
And it's hard because I genuinely, I really thought it would work. And I was really excited. I was like, you mean I don't have to put on outside pants every day if I don't want to?
Do you know, it's funny that you say that. I was listening to, so it was one of the TikTokers. I can't remember who. talking about taking your shoes off. If I take my shoes off, I'm done. I'm not going outside. But every morning, I get up, I get dressed, and I put on my shoes. Every morning.
Because you have to feel like you're getting ready for the day, right?
Because I've also got 4 teenage kids, so the chances that I'm leaving the house today are pretty high.
Okay.
So, but it's that like mind shift that I have my shoes on all day until 10 o'clock, and I take them off and I go to bed. So as soon as I unlace my shoes,
Yeah.
I'm in like switch off mode. I was like, nothing's happening now. I'm so the thought of having non-going outside trousers, I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. I'm always going to be ready to go outside.
Yeah, like if I'm wearing like lounge pants, yoga pants, whatever, casual athleisure stuff,
Athleisure wear, yeah.
I'm less productive in my work. I'm less productive in my house. I'm mentally not in as good a space because unless I'm dressed to go to the gym and I'm genuinely putting on my gym clothes, these other clothes to me they're the do nothing clothes. They're the sit and watch Netflix clothes. And so I can't get behind my laptop and put in a solid day of work wearing a pair of yoga pants. I personally just can't do that. Now, I don't need to wear shoes. I tried that for a little while. Like, do I need to put shoes on to feel like I'm ready? But it feels really weird to wear shoes in the house, even if they're only inside shoes, because I will typically forget I'm wearing my inside shoes, and then I will go outside and then I will curse. And
yeah. So, my grandparents always wore shoes inside. My wife and her family always took their shoes off at the door. They've relaxed more now, so I can actually go in the house with my shoes on. Where dating, it was like on the doorstep in the rain, taking off my shoes. I'm like, you're not even letting me stand in your hallway to take my shoes off. It was a bit weird. But yeah, the compromise we now have in the house is that there's no shoes upstairs.
Yep.
So I have my shoes on all day, every day. Luckily, we've got 2 bathrooms, so I don't need to go upstairs until bedtime. But then when I go to bed, I'm asleep. And my wife's like reading a book or watching something on the internet with the light on. So I need to wind down. I was like, I've come upstairs. The only thing I come upstairs to do is sleep. That's it. Or, shout at the kids if they're not listening to you. But,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I, in Canada, at least in my household, we, like all of my friends as well, your shoes come off in the front, like in the foyer, in the front lobby area.
In the boot room.
Oh, I was never that fancy. No, I came from lower middle class. There was no room for boots. There was
yeah, next door to the front door.
yeah, it's just all the shoes here. And so when I go into someone's house and they say leave your shoes on, I feel really uncomfortable with it because I'm tracking so much filth into someone else's house. And I don't mind taking my shoes off. I mean, if I'm not wearing socks, I'll usually keep a pair of socks in my purse if I'm going to someone's house so that I can specifically be respectful of, their needs to have a clean house and my need to not contribute to the clutter and mess, because I know how irritating it is to run the vacuum all the time. So it's, it's interesting. Huh. Okay.
I don't know how we got onto shoes. Oh yeah, we got onto shoes because of non-work pants. I was like, non-work pants. Right. I have like 4 pairs of jeans, chinos, and my suits. It's like that's well, and shorts for the summer. But
but like no jogging pants or anything like that.
I don't exercise. Well, I walk. But
not many people exercise in them. They just have them. They don't exercise in them.
Well,
I mean, how many people actually cross-train in their cross-trainers?
Well, yeah. I'm wearing sneakers. The Adidas sneakers. Ooh.
I'm not wearing socks or shoes, but I'm not going to share my bare feet on the internet. That's a totally different channel.
OnlyFans only. Link in the description.
Well,
Oh, you see, British people do laugh.
and this is how neurodiversity turns up in my life.
I went on a podcast. I had to refuse to not put my feet on the internet.
And you know what? Nobody will be surprised if I said that to them. Those who know me would be like, of course, that's where your conversation went.
Absolutely. Cool. So what are you doing for work? I haven't stalked you very much.
That's okay. So I am by trade sort of a marketeer type marketing person. I flip-flop between marketing and sales most of my career. So at the moment, I am a project manager / generalist with a boutique-sized digital agency. And it's great because it allows me to do all the things. But having come out of burnout, where I went into burnout because of all the things, I'm currently on a bit of a sabbatical. I'm on a bit of a break at the moment because I realized that even though I've done all the things to look after my well-being, I followed all of the instructions, I didn't change how I work. I changed where I work, but I didn't change how I work. And so it sucks because I want to be contributing. I want to be on my projects. I want to be with my team. And I'm so overwhelmed by some tasks and so underwhelmed by other tasks that I become overwhelmed. And that's a really hard thing to try and explain to yourself and also to someone else, that I know that this thing needs to be done, but it's not in my wheelhouse. And so I just sit here and I stare at my computer screen. And I mean, I was using medication when I first got diagnosed, and trying to figure out how does that fit in my life. And what I've discovered is, being a female with hormones, medication is thoroughly unpredictable. And it actually made me really, really good at my job 2 weeks of the month. Hyper focus, could produce beautiful things. And then 2 weeks of the month, I just gave myself horrible self-talk for not being able to uphold the standard I had for myself the other 2 months. And so I was just going through this really, really unhealthy cycle, and decided to take myself off my meds, and talked about it with my doctor and said, like, look, I've lived 39 years this way, and there are struggles. I'm not going to say there aren't. But the benefit of being able to actually get through all the cruddy things on my to-do list doesn't outweigh the cost to my mental well-being for the other 2 weeks of the month. I'm giving myself a hard time. So it's hard because I'm interested in everything and I want to do everything, and I often get involved in everything. And then not everything gets finished, or not everything gets done to the caliber it should. And I feel horrible about it. Right? It's not a fun time, but that's what I do. Is I do marketing when I'm not dealing with suspected burnout.
And your medication, were you on stimulants or non-stimulants? Did you shop around, or did you find one and then bounce off of it?
So it was interesting because in the Netherlands, we don't have as long of a wait list as you guys have over in the UK, but it was from the time I suspected that I might be, and then I had a pre-diagnosis, like a screening call.
Yeah.
It was another 9 months before I actually got into my diagnosis trajectory. And a couple weeks before I went for the trajectory, I actually I went on a psychedelic sleepover and I used psilocybin and was doing all this stuff. And I remember getting into my diagnostic, and the psychologist, I said to him, well, actually, my brain's been really quiet. And I think it's because I did these. And he went, yeah, it probably is. Do you want to keep going? Like, do you want to keep with the diagnostic, or maybe you just use a natural? Yeah. And so when I went through I passed my diagnostic with flying colors.
The only thing I passed with 100% in my whole life.
Yeah, it was. They had to call they had my mom participate in the diagnosis as well. And so we have obviously this 8-hour time zone difference. So she got on a Zoom call at 3 a.m, her time.
That's commitment.
So she's there in like her old lady fuzzy pajamas in bed, talking to this Dutch psychologist. But then when I went through the medication trajectory, I was really clear that I only wanted to take 1 pill a day. And so I was on methylphenidate. I don't even know the full medical name for it, but that one. And I was on the smallest dose possible because they bumped me a dose and I had the shakes and was so anxious, and it was not pretty. But we tried a few doses of like doing, okay, take a pill, like take a 4-hour pill, take a quick release versus an extended release. And I felt that the extended release was just the easiest for me to be able to maintain, because I just take it after I have breakfast and then get on with my day. But it would take a couple hours to kick in, and then it would kick in right before lunch. And then, 5 o'clock, it starts to wind itself down. And at 9 o'clock, the noise would come back in my brain. And I go to bed at 10 o'clock. So that was also a really, really big challenge.
So how long did you try that for before you bounced off of it?
I was on meds for 3 months. Yeah. And when I talked with all of my medical professionals about like, what do I do? They all said, there's nothing wrong with taking a break and just seeing. And, when I realized, like, I was genuinely considering taking my meds just to get through some of my to-do list. And that's when I realized, like, that's a problem for me. That is a not acceptable usage of my medication. That's how I felt about it, because it was a crutch to get through something versus finding a different solution.
I can see how many people might turn to it for that reason, and instead of taking it 28 days, actually only taking it 4 days a month, because I really need to focus on this thing, and without this, it's going to be really hard. Rachel spoke a little bit about her medication journey. She's got her own YouTube series documenting that and how her menstrual cycle and hormone balance impacts that. She's now on Concerta, I think.
That was the brand name of what I was on. Yeah.
But that's the second. I think she tried something else and didn't work, and then she went on Concerta. And then Matt Gutwell speaks quite regularly on non-stimulant meds for ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other things that can help. But
I found. Yeah, well, so this is the thing. Like, so I mean, with psilocybin, obviously, magic mushrooms is not something I would take daily. Maybe, who knows? Things could change.
As a tea,
Well, but so actually, I have a CBD tea.
Yeah.
And because I
just you don't really follow like celebrity chefs, do you?
No. Should I?
Well, so Gordon Ramsay, everybody knows Gordon Ramsay. He's doing he was doing a like travel cook show with Gino D'Acampo and where's Fred from? Fred was from. He was like the concierge guy from First Dates, which is a British TV show where people go to a restaurant for a first date and they film it. And anyway.
Okay.
And they were using THC infused CBD oil in cooking. So the clip's about 10 minutes long, but it was like, for people who aren't used to drugs, 3 milligrams of THC is quite a lot. So Gordon's like, I won't have anything. Fred had like a couple of drops in his tea. Oh, that tastes nice. But like had a sip and then put it down, and then like ate a thing with like a drop on. Oh, that tastes nice, and then put it down. Gino was 5 in his tea, 3 on this, 4 on this, 6 on this, and ate everything. Halfway through the clip, he's like on the floor with a like handkerchief bandana and sunglasses on, going, "Can I get a glass of water?"
Yeah.
So yeah, just the conversation of CBD. I was like, I watched that yesterday or the day before, and I was like, that's hilarious.
Well, like I never understood why pot didn't do it for me. Like I've only ever smoked a few times, but I never understood why. And that was always one of those really frustrating moments. Like my friends are having the best time, and I'm over here bored out of my skull. I can actually watch something and not get up and do the laundry and that was, I started putting these pieces together of like, and and I have friends who that's how they medicate, is with, marijuana. And yeah, and you just, going back to what I was talking about, being blindsided, like there are all these things, I went back through some historical, like personality type tests the other day because I was looking for something, and we had done this Discovery Insights back in 2015 at one of my companies. And it is so clear that Julie has ADHD when you read this, if you know anything about it, like, how to communicate with her. Don't use a low voice. Be prepared for massive starts, abrupt finishes, pivots, like all of this stuff. And I'm just sitting there going, there were so many moments in my life that someone could have said, hey, we think there's something else here. Should we have a talk? And it just never happened. And there's grief involved with that, because you think, I'm really proud of everything I've accomplished. I have a great life. Would it be different? I don't know. It's kind of irrelevant at this point. But maybe it's not, right? Because now it'll be different moving forward. There's nothing you can do about what's already happened, except go to trauma therapy a lot. That's not it's incredibly helpful, incredibly traumatic.
So knowing that you've watched 40 hours of me talking to other people.
I didn't watch it. Okay, I didn't watch it. Yeah.
The traumatizing bit of that whole conversation for me is reinforcing the position that there's something wrong. So I was working in a HR consultancy that specialized in human behaviors. That was what we did.
Yeah.
Richard's really sensitive. Richard's really defensive. Maybe there's some childhood trauma going on. Let's send him on a psychotherapy retreat. Come back from a therapy retreat worse. And I was like, there's something going on, coaching, counseling, therapy. And then the founder of the company got diagnosed ADHD. And she was like, you've got ADHD. I'm going to pay for you to get a diagnosis. And then I got the piece of paper, and 9 months later, I'm out of a job. So it's like, well, it's, not very helpful.
No. Well, it's interesting because I got my diagnosis, and I had agreed to part ways with the employer I had been with. So I had been out on sick leave, and we had agreed that it wasn't going to be beneficial for me to go back. Even though they were happy to have me come back, it wasn't what I needed, just wasn't going to be possible within their organization. And so I started applying for jobs, and I was fully upfront. Like, if you are on my LinkedIn, you can actually follow my story of burnout. You can follow my story of getting a diagnosis. I talk about using psilocybin. I barf my feelings on the internet. And so that was one of the things, like when we did this Discovery Insights, that was really interesting to the facilitator is, you know how you have your conscious and unconscious personas? I'm the exact same in both. She's like, I've been doing this for 10, 15 years, however long it was at that point. She's like, I've never come across someone who is the exact same person consciously and unconsciously. And I remember saying to her, it's too much work to be anybody other than who I am. Like, I just can't. I will forget who I'm supposed to be. I will forget what I'm supposed to do. So I just don't. And I have turned up to really important meetings. The first time I met one of my senior leaders at a company, I was there. I got pulled into a meeting to pitch a project. I was wearing a yellow t-shirt that had a rainbow on it that said, "Reading is for awesome people," and a pair of red Converse shoes. He's in a suit and tie. And it was just like, this is just who I am. And I'm not going to always fit your vision, but it doesn't mean I can't do it and exceed it, and often help you learn things you didn't even know, because I can connect dots you don't even know exist. But it does come with a lot of risks, right? It comes with the risk of burnout, the risk of, extra sensitivity, the risk of, and risk is maybe not the right word, but that's the reality. Like, yeah, I'm going to get my feelings hurt. And yeah, I'm going to say stuff I probably shouldn't.
Well, yeah. Then we get into the conversation of defining shouldn't. I was like, I shouldn't because it's uncouth. I shouldn't because it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. I shouldn't because it's wrong. I shouldn't. Why?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I?
and who gets to decide? I wrote an article about this a couple of years ago for this group called the Future Shapers, and it was called "The Accidental Persecution of the Innovators," because I was outraged that these people who can't do what I do are telling me what to do. Design us this thing, right? Design us a curriculum or do something for us, but do it within these parameters. Paint us a picture. It's a little bit like, I guess, what AI is doing right now, right? Where we're saying, here's exactly what I want from you, mid-journey. Here's all the prompts. Now deliver. Oh, it's not what I wanted. You did it wrong. Well, maybe your instructions weren't clear. And yeah, I don't know why I'm on this tangent or rant, but I just know I get really, really upset when people critique something that they don't understand because they can't understand it.
Ooh. So, I once had a debate with somebody who challenged my expertise and ability to critique something because I wasn't a subject matter expert. To which I said, I might not be able to write War and Peace, but I know when a book's shit. You can look at a painting and go, nah. Without being an artist, you can still look at something and go, nah. Without being able to drive,
yeah,
you can still see somebody driving like a maniac and think that's wrong. So, yes, I do agree that sometimes picking on people when you don't know what you're talking about is a naive thing to do. But wrong's wrong.
Well, but this is the thing. I guess where I'm going with this is, it's not like, you can learn to be a painter. You can learn to write War and Peace. You can learn how to drive a car. You can't learn what it's like to have our brain. You just can't. You can be as empathetic as possible. You can try and hold space for us. But there is nothing that we know of today. Like, it's not like we can put on some sort of labor stimulation on your brain to make you feel like what it's like to have ADHD or autism or any range of neurological things. So you can empathize with us and you can learn about us and you can support us, but you literally can't know what it's like. And that's where I get a little bit frustrated, because I don't know how to explain what it's like to somebody who doesn't get it, because it's all I know. And so then you try and find some common ground, and you try and find a middle place, and then you end up with really well-intentioned, well, just worry less. Just use a planner. Just make a list. Just.
So I'm so glad you said just. So going back to the conversation of, what is this conversation? No, I think it was the last. So I literally spoke to Tanya like 2.5 hours earlier than this episode. So this will come out a week later. But essentially, during that conversation, I was talking about the Scout movement, because I was a Scout leader, and the current Cub leader. So Cubs are 8 to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
A few years ago, when I was still helping, because I'm now a committee member rather than a leader. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
She was going through some stuff at work, and we were having a whole conversation of coaching and mentoring. And I was like, all you need to do is stop using the word just and if only. Just so you can have all of the conversations that you want. But if you use if only or just, and maybe also but
and should.
I think you might be allowed should.
Okay.
And the way that the brain challenges with like oppositional defiance to those types of words. Well, the problem is that just is just an acronym or an abbreviation for a lot more stuff. Yeah, if only you'd just ... Well, loads of people want to figure it out for themselves because they then feel powerful for fixing their own problems. So when you go to them and say, well, if only you'd done this thing, then you wouldn't be where you are. Not only are you belittling them and degrading them because they made a mistake, you're also having a go at them because they didn't know how to avoid the mistake in the first place, and you're robbing them of fixing it in the third. So
that's why I hate the superhero. Going back to what we were talking about way earlier, the superhero thing, others. And for me, that is, it's not okay. Why should I say that I'm a superhero and you're not? Like for me, that so it's an othering thing for me, and it just ugh.
So how do you feel about neuroatypical, neurodivergent, neurominority compared to neuronormative, neuromajority?
So when I first started exploring this space, I was using neurotypical and neuroatypical. And then I was kind of like, I don't really like atypical, because that is, again, it's a comparative. And somewhere in my posts there, I think it's in my featured things, there's this really wonderful video that was put out by a British group, where it's talking about the diagnostic threshold. And it's talking about everyone has diversity.
Yeah.
Everyone has it. There is simply a diagnostic threshold that when you have crossed it, you are now different. You are now divergent from. Yeah. And so I use neurodivergent. I personally don't really like neurospicy or some of the other descriptors. I feel like they make light of, to me, what's actually a very serious thing. But I have nothing against the people. Like, if people want to use it, that's their choice. That's their descriptor, right? Like, I refer to myself as an immigrant, not an expat, because I am an immigrant. I had to go through an immigration process. But if I call myself an expat, I perceive it as somebody who's white and privileged and has a lot of money and all this stuff. And yeah, sure, I'm white and I'm generally privileged because I've been able to do this. But I still had to go through all of the same immigration processes anyone else has to go through, right? So for me, maybe that's where I try and play a bit safe. I figure out what feels good for me. And then, yeah, if you want to say that you're neuroatypical or a neuromajority or a neurominority, that's cool. That's just not how I identify.
So do you think that neurodivergent is othering in the same way that the superpower narrative within neurodivergence is?
Hypothetically, yes. Because it is, right? We're saying that you are diverging from the mainstream. And therefore, we have identified a mainstream and a new path. But I don't know how else we should. Okay, here's a question. Should we differentiate? Does differentiating actually help, or does it hinder? Because there are a lot of people out there who don't want to get labels and who don't want to put their kids through it because they don't want their kids growing up thinking that they are different. Even though by having the label, I have access to support I wouldn't have had otherwise because the government recognizes I may need assistance.
So in the UK, it's probably more progressive than elsewhere. So our special educational needs, disabled students allowance, and access to work, they're the big three based on age, don't require diagnosis. You just have to prove a struggle.
Okay.
So, if you're in primary, secondary school, so if you're under 16 and you're struggling with school, then the school, by law, have to help you with reading, writing, math.
Okay.
So you don't need to be dyslexic, dyscalculic,
right?
Because that support's there. When you're in higher education, so 16, 18 plus, then you've got the disabled students allowance, which basically says, what are your specific support needs? Here's some money to help pay for those needs. And it might be, well, I'm dyslexic, so I don't handwrite. Okay, we'll pay for a laptop. Or, I'm really bad at diary management. Okay, we'll pay for an EA to diarize your time and make sure you get to lessons on time, whatever. Okay. And then access to work is basically, if you're employed, how do you keep your job? And that could be workplace coaching, that could be executive assistant support, that could be Grammarly, or text to speech, or speech to text, depending on which way around you want to dictate or read. So all of those, you just have to prove hardship for support. So you just have to say, I struggle with this. The impact of that struggle is this. Can I get some help? And then most of the time you'll get the help. So you don't need, here's my diagnosis of dyslexia. Can I have Grammarly? Here's my diagnosis of ADHD. Can I have da da da? And then because we've got privatized healthcare, ADHD is weird because it's like the only neurodivergence that you can kind of treat. Like Tourette's and dyspraxia, you can do some coordination stuff. You can do some anti-stress stuff so your tics are less apparent or less volatile. But ADHD, you can medicate, or at least medicate the symptoms of. So, there's loads of people in the psychology field that don't believe that ADHD exists. We're just medicating bored people. And I was like, well, you only saying that because you don't have ADHD.
Well, it's interesting. I ran into a psychologist who I had gone to see her for some stuff previously, and I wanted to work with her because I was like, this is what I suspect. And I kind of want to work with somebody as I go through this. And she told me she didn't believe in it. And it was interesting because I felt that she had it, because I connected with her, and she could follow all the threads, right? Like, I was like, the only people who can usually keep up are part of the
Also have it,
club.
yeah.
And so I remember being really shocked, but I think, like, I don't know much about the Dutch rules. I know I didn't need a diagnosis to ask for support, but personally, I felt like having the diagnosis gave me a confidence to ask for support, because I could at least, I had this piece of paper that said, yes, Julie, you're wonderful, but you also have challenges, and here's what some of them are. And so, you know, it's hard, because there are a lot of people who feel like it's being overdiagnosed, it's being this, it's being that. And it's like, well, in the age of the internet, we're just all talking and finding each other. And so we're amplifying the volume. We existed this way before the diagnosis, will exist this way long after the diagnosis. But the tools that are out there are allowing us to have our voices be heard. And that's what you're hearing. You're hearing the I can't even think what the word is anymore.
Like reverberation of.
That's the one. Yeah. That's
So,
what people are hearing.
yeah, it's been really funny recently that I've been listening and talking to a load of people about the before times. So, you know, my son's drinking like probiotics. And I was like, 200 years ago, we didn't know germ theory. You know, people just ate, and their gut health was their gut health. So if you think that you need to spend $1 a day drinking some yogurt that's magically going to make your guts better, cool. But we didn't need that. And then you go back further and think ADHDers, sociopaths, psychopaths have been in our communities for 60 million years. But in the last 100 years, we need to medicate them.
So my mom has this really good theory about this, which is all of those people who got put on ships and sent to the New World, or went and conquered, you know, countries, they all had it. They, like, explorers, all had ADHD. And so she's like, North America, you know, we're all byproducts of people who've basically left for a new life, who've had that, you know, sense of adventure. She's like, there's probably a higher concentration of us in North America and Australia. Yeah, because genetics is a thing, right? And so she's like, you know, my dad, both of my parents were undiagnosed, both definitely got it. And all 4 kids, to some degree, have something. But I'm the only one who's pursued the official diagnosis. And yeah.
So there was some research that came out recently in the UK. So the ADHD Alliance is it's associated to London's police force.
Okay.
And they've done some work on a project called The Clink, which is British slang for jail.
Yeah. Okay.
Brixton Prison, which is a prison in London, to research traits or prisoner traits. 50% of prisoners have ADHD traits.
Yep.
Okay, and then you scroll back the clock to 100 years ago, before the First World War. About half the prisoners that had more than a 2-year sentence were sentenced to transportation. Where were they transported to? The Americas and Australia.
Ding, ding, ding. Yep.
So, yes, some of those people chose the life and emigrated for a new life in the new world. Some of them were sent there because they were naughty.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think that's the thing is, if you think back to, I mean, you even look at like modern times, shall we say, but you think about when we don't understand, and we being sort of the bigger populace, we put people in the boxes that we think that, okay, I don't get you, so you're going to go into this box and you're going to go into that box. And that's why there's I don't want to, generalize things, but I mean, there were a lot of people in asylums that probably didn't need to be in an asylum, but they were just different enough. And I think that's where it gets a bit scary, because as somebody who's now got this diagnosis and who is quite public talking about it, I have had people who say, are you sure you want to be so public? Are you sure you want to disclose? And because of the fact that I don't believe in being anybody other than who I am, I would much rather tell somebody up front, this is what you get when you get me. I may be difficult to manage. I may not be able to finish projects. I may this, I may that, but I'm also the first person to organize something for a sick coworker, the first person to do this. I know the names of your family and I ask how they're doing, because that matters to me, right? So there's two sides to every coin. And I don't remember where I was going with this, but it was probably somewhere great.
Well, I think there's a piece there about empathy, compassion, and people pleasing. Do you have that connection to your peers and what's going on for them? Because they don't have it for you, and you want to role model niceness, or you have that need for connection and community, that you want to build that connection and community, and by doing so you're showing that you care to those people around you, so you take the time and effort to know and understand all this stuff. Or do you have some autistic traits that include a special interest in people, and actually the reason why that you're knowing all of this stuff and retaining all of this stuff and showing that you care is that you actually have a special interest in people?
So all of the above. But funny enough, I've mentioned my mom a lot tonight, but I was talking to her last night and we were talking about special interests, because she's big into genealogy. And I asked her, why has she never been tested? And did she suspect she might be autistic? And she was, she kind of waffled and she said she didn't need a test. But we were laughing because I said to her, I was like, one of the things when you hear about, sort of the special interests category, the example is always, for some reason, like dinosaurs. Like there's always, at least that's what I come across, is it's always this like young boy and dinosaurs. And I remember saying to myself, oh, I don't have a special interest. So like, even though the tests indicate I probably fall somewhere in there, I don't have a special interest and I can maintain eye contact, like all of the horrible stereotypes. And then last night I realized my special interest is romance novels. I don't even know how many tens of thousands of romance novels I have read in my life. And I was like, oh God, my special interest is smut. That's not something you talk about at a dinner party. Like, I've got nothing now.
No, that means that you've now got an archive of awesome things that you can cherry pick from and write your own novels.
True. I also can understand really, really random, obscure references. That there's a movie with Claire Danes, and is it Starlight, maybe Star something, where she's a star who falls out of the sky.
And it's got Robert De Niro in it as well.
Yes, I think so, and a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
But in that film, and I mean it's 20 years old, so it's no longer a spoiler, but one of the brothers, he gets murdered in the bathtub. And I remember sitting in the movie theater and he bleeds blue in the bathtub. And I was sitting there with 3 friends and I'm giggling because I understand why he's bleeding blue, because he's a blue blood. Because
Stardust.
Stardust. Okay.
2007. I googled.
Yeah. There you go. But right, like, so my special interest of romance novels allowed me to understand the cinematic inference of he's a blue blood and that's why he bled blue. And nobody in the row understood why I was sitting there giggling like a mad person. And then afterwards, I was like, well, this is why. And they're like, how would you even, I'm like, you just got to read a lot of romance novels, folks. That's all you got to do. And so it's interesting how, again, like I think I gaslight myself to a certain extent, because it's like, well, I don't have it. It's kind of like, I'm not this. And you talk yourself out of it because society has taught you that it's a specific way, and you're not yet ready to embrace that.
Or is it because you don't want the label? You don't want the stereotype associated with the label?
I actually think I would rather have the label.
Okay.
I personally, I don't like the unknown, even though I'm the adventurer, as we discovered.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I think what it is I think I like the definitives, right? So it's yes, you have traits, but you are not over a threshold. Okay, that's fine. Or yes, you're over the threshold. Or you know what? You're nowhere near the threshold. So it's, it maybe it's something else. Let's consider other things. Let's look at other supports that are in place for you. So it's that kind of unknown where it's just like, it's like having a pebble in your shoe and you can't stop to take it out. So you just kind of have to keep going with it until you find a place, until you're ready to sit down and take it out. And that, I think, for me, is what this whole journey's been about. Is it's mostly about curiosity. I'm curious to know these things about myself. And unfortunately, it means sometimes I find things out that I'm not particularly pleased with, but I'd rather know and be able to address it, or consciously decide to ignore it, than be ignorant and oblivious, I think.
It's perfectly acceptable for you to think things. So we've been going 90 minutes. The lens flare has now occurred on your screen. So it looks like a Star Wars movie. So towards the end, we have a conversation about something that you are passionate about that we might not have talked about. Mm-hmm. Is there something today that you're like, oh, when I'm going to go and speak to Richard, I'm going to talk about? Have we spoken about anything that you did or didn't want to speak about? If not, now's the floor.
I'm looking at my notes. No, I think we went a bunch of different places. None of them were expected, but all delightful. I think, yeah.
Where did you expect to go?
Well, that's the thing. I don't actually know. Because like, if I look at,
you wrote notes.
I know. So, but if I look at my notes, I had a column for who am I? I had a column about books that have mattered to me, which I've referenced a little bit. I made a list for myself because I was curious. I was like, how many jobs have I had? Because that's the thing, is I've actually not struggled in employment. I've been able to find opportunities within organizations and stay. Being in smaller organizations is much harder for me, though. So that's where I have a bit of issue. And then I have a column for things I've been told and things I've done.
Okay, so on your things you've been told list, what's one of them that's this? You go, nothing. I believe everything.
Well, the very first one is just worry less.
Yep.
Other things I've been told things like, it's so much quieter when you're not here. And not in a malicious way, but just in like an observational, like, oh, you're back because the noise is back.
I had my appraisal, was it 2018 or 2019? And it was the first year we'd done like a 360 with everybody in the office.
Okay.
And the top comments were, he is the morale of the office.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a tornado. And I was like, look, I can't be both at the same time. It's like, we love it when he's we love it when he's in the office, and we love it when he's not in the office. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. one of the leaders who he was so fantastic to me when I really needed him, but he described me as, I'm like a tennis ball that's been dropped into a cube, and I am just all the walls, all the places, all the things, I once described myself to somebody as, there's always a moment of crisis or a moment of chaos before a transformation. I'm that moment.
All the time.
All the time. And it's exhausting. But I've also been told things like, I could never do what you do or what you did, right? Like moving to the other side of the world. And I've said to some really brave people, like, I could never do what you did, which is stay behind. You've chosen a path that just it would have never worked for me. It doesn't mean my path is better. My path is my path, and your path is your path, right? And so I think that's maybe where I struggle with that, going back to that othering thing. Like, we're all individual, and we're just walking at our own paces. And so I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is the comparison, right? When you see other people thriving, or social media tells you they're thriving.
So, something to add to your list. Comparison is the thief of joy.
That it is.
Which was one of my takeaway quotes from my psychotherapy retreat in 2019. Cool.
Yeah. So I will leave you with a quote. I think it's Tony Robbins, maybe?
Yeah.
He says it in one of his Netflix documentaries. It's like a throwaway comment. I think it's him, but he says, "We all get what we tolerate." And I remember hearing that and being like, that's exactly it. Like, the amount of times I have that urge to speak up and to speak out, because you see an injustice, and I don't want to tolerate them.
And there's an evolution to that, which is you deserve.
Oh, don't get me started on the word deserve.
Next week on the Entitlement Podcast.
I have very fixed opinions about things. That's something else I'm learning, is that it's and it's okay to have those opinions, and it's okay to change those opinions.
But nothing in life is free. So everything comes at a cost. And if you don't think there's a cost, then you're the cost.
Oh, why'd you have to do that?
I once had a friend who would just go around handing crap out. And his phrase was, "Don't worry, it's free." And I was like, yeah, because you don't want it. And I then have to deal with the thing that you've just given to me. And then somebody else was talking about online safety. And it was like, if you're signing up to all these free lists, who do you think's paying for all of that? What's the end product here? It's you and your data. And I'm like, yeah, that's a bit dark.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're of a similar age, therefore a similar generation, which means we grew up without the internet. And we grew up, and like, I was in my 20s. I think I was 21 maybe when Facebook hit the scene.
Right.
And you didn't really know what it was. You kind of, and you didn't understand what giving away your data meant.
Yeah.
And now we're dealing with the repercussions 20 years later. And yeah, we are a commodity now. And that's, well,
it's a choice. It's what Steve Jobs said on the subject of privacy. He was like, you either have it or you don't have it at all. Mm-hmm. And it needs to be our choice. If we give away our privacy, then we get targeted ads. Then we don't have to waste time looking for stuff, because the internet will put it in front of us. I saw a meme this morning that was like, when Facebook shows you an ad for something you were only thinking. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm in digital marketing, and I use the Brave browser with cookie blocker to the extreme. I don't have Facebook products. Well, I have them to keep in touch with my mom.
Yeah.
Don't, but it's a choice we make. And I think it goes back to that thing around disclosure, right? Like how did you find me? What made you pick me?
Because Theo has put together a list of ND evangelists, of which I'm one.
I'm one too, and it shocked me because I had never heard of Theo before.
So I was like, I need to start focusing on the podcast properly. I've got tentative feelers out with some people that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I broaden the horizon a little and start interacting with these people that are on the same lists that I'm on? So we must have something in common. Out we came to have some conversations. So my passing thought is, whilst talking about what's going on in your background, that green plant definitely looks like the praying mantis from Ants. Or it might be A Bug's Life. So at the top, it's like flat with like two beady eyes. And then down to your shoulder is like the mandibles. And then his back is like flat sticking out. And so that's all I've been looking at for the last hour and a half.
Well, when I watch my episode, that will be the only thing I see. And that will help detract me from all the other self-critique that I may give, because I'll just be like, no, Julie, there was a praying mantis coming to get you. You had no choice. You just have to sit there and be as still as possible as I twitch and wave my hands around.
Pitch cubes.
Bag clip.
Yeah, and then I did this. So this is one of the like little tool holders that you like get.
Yep.
And I stuck a pencil in it, and then like all session I've been like spinning it. And then I put another bit in the other end to counterbalance it.
Yeah, bag clips, hair elastics, clicky pens, hair clips. It's I've given myself permission to fiddle. I've given myself permission to twitch, because I can accept that that's just what keeps me going. So good on us for getting through this.
You see, ADHD people can focus for more than 10 minutes.
If it interests us, and thankfully we're both interesting.
Well, I'm not
That's
blowing
the
smoke.
lie we tell ourselves.
Well, Julie, it has been an awesome afternoon. Go and enjoy the sunshine while you still have some.
There's rain clouds coming, but I will do my best.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, we'll talk to you later.
See you in a bit.
Bye.